Hey, Blockhead Traders. Here at Blockhead Traders, I must inform you that we are not financial professionals. Nothing we say should be considered financial advice. We offer our own thoughts and opinions to you, the viewer. We expect you to take these and form your own financial opinions and make your own financial decisions. Today is Wednesday, October 5th, 2022, and this is Blockhead Traders Weekly. In this week's episode, I am joined by fellow Blockhead trader Viper XL 007, and we are going to have a discussion about the trouble of exiting a play where you don't have a plan. But before we hop to that, I want to give a shout out to our Discord, link in the description below. You can click on that, say hello to myself, Viper, a few of the other Blockhead traders. Love to chat with you, hear what you're trading, hear what type of content you want to hear about. You can also find this episode wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And if you can't find it, drop us a note and we will get it to there. But let's hop to this week's content, Viper, and that is the trouble of the exit plan. Now, you have probably heard us if you've listened to our show that we always talk about having a plan when you enter a trade, whether that is a plan for profit, a plan for a loss. It's always have a plan on where you're going. And for the most part, follow that in equities. We have my thesis. I stick to my thesis. I stick to my trading rules. It's pretty black and white. It's pretty cut and dry. Well, we've been dabbling in the years over crypto stuff. And one of the big crypto things we've kind of gotten into is this thing called Chikn.Farm. And there's a few episodes, I'll put a link in the description below of these past episodes of Chikn.Farm. And it's this crypto game ecosystem that I got into. And, I kind of scaled up my investment in it, let's call it investment for that. I call it an investment because my time horizon was really undefined. It was more, hey, let's throw some bucks in there. Let's see what happens. And, we'll go from there. There is the first mistake, in my opinion, is I had no plan to get out. I didn't really know when I was going to exit if the thing went south, and I didn't really know when I was going to exit if it went well. And lately, the Chikn.Farm project has been on fire. I mean, there's been a crypto drought in general for the past several months. I mean, you've probably heard it on the news. Tokens are going down, values going down, people are running. It's getting a lot of bad media. And in all this, chicken stuff went down too. Did it go down proportionally? I don't know. We can look at price action on it, but lately it's really, really been heating up with a bunch of changes in the game. And, I had plunked down a chunk of AVAX to play this game. It's on the Avalanche chain, and it's a lot bigger now from my investment. And Viper and I have just been saying, what do we do? It's one of my goals to become an Avalanche staker. You need 2,000 AVAX to do that. I've been trying to slowly build that. And the current value of the stuff in the Chikn.Farm, it's nothing to shrug off. So Viper, I don't know, maybe you can talk a little bit about Chicken. You're the one that kind of brought it into my world, and you've kind of been playing along with us, and you're a little bit more invested than me, but what's going on with Chikn.Farm? Just a slight recap for those that don't want to go back and watch all those videos.
Yeah. So real quick, before we get into that, just at a very high level, the concept of this exit strategy, I know that your plan in equities, your options plans, which absolutely go back, check out those videos on the options plays and whatnot. Like you said, your plan in equities has always been very rudimental and, rigid, and, have your entries and exits. I have gotten a lot better in that way in equities. But I'm still pretty bad in ways that I think a lot of people can relate to, which is just the emotions of, even if I have a plan, let's say I set a profit target and all of it, and it's a pretty aggressive, gap that I'm expecting that to fill. And then we do, and then it's coming up on it. And then the emotions, if I'm watching the chart, the emotions will always kick in of, oh man, it's really got some steam behind it. Like maybe I should maybe I should cancel that order and just let's just see where it goes, or I find myself chasing the money of I didn't enter, but now it's starting to take off and now I want to get in, and so then I get in at a bad price and all that kind of stuff. So that's all very real struggle and part of this, what I think leads in a little bit to where we're at with chicken. And there's a lot more we can discuss on that end of things, the trading and the equities and stuff like that, because I think it's important to flesh that out. What I view as a little bit different in this chicken thing is I also did not have an exit strategy mapped out when I got into this, but some of that was just a tiny little bit by design. Some of it was also just because I had no expectation. I mean, that was what I tried to be very clear about going into all things crypto is, don't do this with any money that is required. I mean, that goes for all trading, only invest what you're willing to lose sort of thing. But also the premise of this, as it's evolved over the last, we're going on almost 11 months that I've been in chicken. End of December is when I got into it. And what's evolved is that I've, really appreciated the platform they're building and the direction they're going, which really turns this into pure investment thinking so much more than trading thinking, where I'm seeing this thing for the long-term play and the potential it has there. And now we're stuck in this little struggle here of like trading mentality of get your profit and go, long-term of like, I know where this is going. And then add in that third perspective of because I'm 100% on board with you of wanting to get that validator stake, something we can explore in another episode, because I think there's a lot of cool things to that. So this third perspective of needing, above everything else, needing to stockpile AVAX, Avalanche token. And I think that's important to call out over US dollars, because we're now on the chain of Avalanche and the currency of the chain is the AVAX token. And like you said, 2,000 AVAX is what we're looking for to get that validator stake. So up until now, I didn't understand that dichotomy of like, well, that's just US dollars. But as we'll explore here in just a second, it's kind of changed where it's not just US dollars, because we put a fixed amount of US dollars in here, and now we're in a situation where we can actually build the AVAX token much more rapidly because of market conditions. And so it feels different, feels a little weird. I think in a good way. But real quick, all right, let's jump in. And this is just super fast, high-level overview of the chicken ecosystem. And what are we talking about here? There is, I'm going to try to avoid going into any long-term speculation of where I think this is going. Let's just look at fundamentally, where are we at right now, and what are the financial mechanics at play? So we have chickens and we have roosters. And so the way this whole thing started is you have chickens. You have a chicken roost, and so you have these chickens, and they will just forever and always, as long as they are roosted, they will produce a certain number of eggs per day. And so you can see this one here does 12 eggs per day, always and forever, till the end of time. So this isn't, egg is an inflationary token. This chicken will produce 12 eggs per day. So how do you make more eggs? This one is 45 kilogram weight. This one is 42. And you can see at 42, this guy's doing 11.25. Down here at 40, this one's doing 10.75. So that's step 2 is the way to increase the egg output per day is to feed your chicken here with the feed button, where there's a feed token, which then you click feed here and you put in however much feed it takes to level up, and then you level up and you produce more egg per day. So that feed token is by design capped. There is a max supply that will be issued, and when we hit that, it's done. And there is enough supply for every chicken in the entire ecosystem to get to 35 kilograms flat. Obviously, that's not going to be the case because some people are going to eat more feed and push past that. But the point here is there is a token that you feed the chicken with, and it also has value, and you also generate it. So now we have a little bit of a loop here. And so make feed, feed chicken, make more egg. What do you do with that egg? Well, you could sell it, but you also need to use that egg to make feed. And so you do that with liquidity providing LP tokens, which we've talked about previously. But basically you take a certain number of eggs, however much you want. You pair it with AVAX in what's called an LP, and you stake it, and that LP is used as liquidity. It's a liquidity pool for anybody that wants to trade egg for AVAX or vice versa. And they've kind of thematically incorporated that here into the ecosystem as this farmland here. And you cannot participate, and this is what's unique to Chikn over any other liquidity providing, you cannot participate in the LP pool unless you have a farmland here. And so you can see my farmland has these different tiles on it. We'll skip over exactly what that means, but suffice it to say there's an entire gamification around this farmland and these tiles and getting it to what's known as this bigness level and getting it to a max bigness level of 120. But for the purposes of this, the farmland is required to LP egg and AVAX, and it's the only way you can produce the feed token, which you would then take over here and feed your chicken with. So now we have the complete loop of how to produce how to produce feed, how to increase your egg production. And then they added roosters. So roosters, similar to chickens, roosters get roosted in the barn, and they produce fertilizer. So you can see this guy produces 62 fert per day. And then we use that fert to increase our bonus emissions of our farmland. So you can see my farmland currently has 6x bonus emissions on it. And this is kind of a really cool, unique touch that they've added to the concept of LP farming, where you're in control of your bonus rate. And so that 6x multiplier gives me a unique 6x multiplier of the feed that I create, which I would then go use and feed my chickens with. And again, there's more use for these roosters long term. There's going to be a fighting game. So that's why you kind of see them holding different weapons and things like that. But for the purposes of this, I think that covers the entire loop that we wanted to talk about, which was this egg token, the feed token, just touching on the FERT token, and then the idea of the farmland, chicken, and rooster. So all of that comes together in a very gamified way to produce this opportunity to invest, to have a yield on your investment, but to also play this grinding, leveling up game as the team is building out more games to come. And the games to come are going to be more approachable, like download an app on your phone kind of thing that we're all more familiar with. But that's the stuff that's down the line. So where this has gotten really interesting lately is these are NFTs. And so these are upgradable NFTs. And so that's one thing I like about it's not unique to Chikn. Other platforms are starting to do this, but Chikn kind of was one of the first. 29 kilograms will never be taken out of this rooster or whatever my chickens were. And so that's really neat because now that's locking in an intrinsic value to this NFT. It's locking in my time, effort, and my monetary effort that I've put into this NFT. And so if we go over to the market, that's where things have really gotten wild. These things are selling. So chickens, you have different rarities, just like any NFT collection. And this floor price has been pure lava. All of my chickens are entry prices around 20 to 30 AVAX. And we'll get into some of that with Sprocket's barn as well. But you can see here the floor price, the cheapest chicken you can get right now is 95.5 AVAX, which is wild to think about. I mean, forget the US dollar equivalent for a second. Just the fact that, like we said, we wanted more AVAX tokens. Now this is producing that return on investment in many more AVAX tokens. Roosters over here, same deal. They are flying off the shelves. Just 2 weeks ago, I took an opportunity to flip these because I saw the pressure coming, the buy pressure coming based on those new releases that Sprocket talked about. I bought a bunch of them at 9 just 2.5 weeks ago. I did not expect it to surge this high this fast, so I flipped them and I sold them around 18 and 19. So I 2x'd my AVAX value in that time frame. So here's a little, like, that was a clear exit strategy, and so, but now we're in the other of like, man, if I just held on to them. And then likewise over on farmland, this is lagging a little bit, but this is up. I mean, farmlands were down to 4 was the cheapest, so we're looking at a 5x, which is crazy to look at a 5x and go, it's doing all right. Like, so. But that's the gist of it, and really highlights the value of the NFT itself. And like I said, one thing I think that helps make these valuable, in addition to all the game stuff that's being built out that we didn't get into, is just the locked value. Like in the marketplace here, you can see these kilograms of these chickens, and that is a factor. So like if I sold that 45 kilogram chicken that I have, it's actually a nice rarity. You can see I'm well ahead of Abraham Lincoln. You can see that my 45 kilogram is well ahead of these chickens that are on the floor. So I'm actually going to, if I wanted to list it, I would come up here and, do it around maybe 140 or something like that, play the marketplace, and people buying in this marketplace are looking at that value to make their purchases. So it presents this really interesting opportunity that we haven't come across before, because the world of crypto GameFi is so dynamic and multifaceted, and I don't know. So I mean, how does this all play into where you're looking at, Sprocket? What's your farm situation?
Yeah, so I kind of summarized at a high level my farm. And it's a cozy little farm. It's not quite the size of your farm. I feel you're more headed to those, large scale industrial farms. Mine is just, the small family farm. I have just 2 chickens and 2 roosters and 1 small farmland. And so what you can see here, I basically put my entry prices on these in AVAX because, like I said, yes, there is a tie-in to US dollar, but that's not really where I was going with my investment into crypto. So, I'd kind of looked back there and I said, look, I really like the way the AVAX and Avalanche has constructed their chains. It seems like this could be one of the few chains that are going to make it through. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of different chains out there. Maybe not hundreds, but there's at least dozens. And each one has its own claim to fame of something, something, something. And I tried to look at what I felt was going to go the distance. And we can talk in a different episode about the benefits of Avalanche, but that's where I decided to start pouring a lot of my stuff into. So I had a plan to kind of scale in at certain dollars amount a month into crypto. And I ended up kind of just buying and buying and buying into this particular game, which is not really the position sizing I'd like to do in my normal equities investment, but it was all speculative money anyway. And the game was kind of fun. So there I go. I jumped into it. And, you can see here I have 2 chickens, both 33 kilograms apiece. I got one of them for about 20 AVAX, the other one for about 30 AVAX. That was my cost basis. My present value of those, roughly 100 AVAX to 115 AVAX, might be a little bit more. I was a little conservative on that. So that's closer to the floor price of that rarity, not taking into account the weight. And then the game, as it kind of went along, there was Rooster. And I'm like, oh, Rooster's kind of neat. Yeah, sure, I'll participate in this Rooster mint. And it was open exclusively to chicken owners. And so it was a cool game to get Rooster. We have an episode on it. You can look back in the back catalog for it. But roughly about 1.5 AVAX I paid for each of those Rooster. they're at 47 AVAX a piece right now. My one farmland, I paid about 5 AVAX for it. It was actually gathered in egg, but it's now 22 AVAX. So back to that 4x, almost 5x move on farmland. Now, interesting thing for me, when I saw this game, the part that just caught my eye, and we talked about this before, is feed. Viper said it's a finite resource. That's what you feed your chickens to make them big. So my strategy was actually to gather as much feed as possible and hoard it, basically waiting for the day in which feed runs out. So I actually have over 1 million entities of feed. Feed is projected to run out in the next 60 days. So supply will go away and demand presumably will stay high if everybody is still interested in the ecosystem, because that's the only way to make your chickens bigger. And that's the only way, the bigger chickens is the only way to get more egg emissions a day. So my betting on this was about the only thing that I had kind of an exit plan for, was gather as much feed, wait till it's all gone, and hang on for the ride. Simple supply and demand. So that's the piece I'm really kind of waiting for. But right now, that's 41 AVAX. I didn't pay anything for that because they came as emissions from the eggs that I was pouring into my liquidity pool, which came from my chickens. So all this stuff is kind of building upon itself. So the other one is the egg. I currently have a little over 1,000 eggs LP'd. Those all came from my chickens through emissions. That is what has been generating the feed. So all in all, if you add all this stuff up, I put about 59 AVAX into this, and it's currently worth just shy of 400 AVAX right now. And that's really kind of jumps out at you like, wow, that's a lot of AVAX up. Now, I'm still bullish on the underlying AVAX token. So yeah, AVAX is around 1750 or something like that right now. But I could easily, my price targets on the AVAX token are more in the $45 to $50 dollar range per token. So, I mean, Viper, this is something that just caught me like, wow, I got all this stuff, but I don't want to let it go because it kind of feels good to pick up these emissions, but is it going to be around forever? I don't know. This is one of those things where your emotions are getting into it and you're just like, this could go up forever, which is not true. I mean, nothing will go up forever. Games don't last forever. Some point people are going to lose interest. And that's really where I'm at with my small family farm.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm in the same boat of, like you said, the thing that because obviously a lot of people watching this are, like probably screaming at the screen. Like, what are you doing? 59 to 389. Like, that's what, I mean, a quick, not quick, but that's, I don't know, let's call it, geez, 400%, 3 or 400%, something like that. Like, what do you do? Like, just do it. Like, just capture it. And to that, you're right. I mean, that's definitely an appropriate reaction. But the main complicating factor to me is exactly what you said with the yield. The yield on this is notable, and so now this is where I'm playing some strategy, but also thinking about exit in that, okay, and this was really a fairly recent revelation I had due to your very adamant, like cold, we'll even call it cold-hearted, even not in a bad way, of like, no, I came here to get more AVAX. And up until a few weeks ago, I was focused on that yield number, and even more so the US dollar version of that yield number. And then all of a sudden it kind of clicked of like, well, yeah, I came here to get more AVAX too. Like, I want in on this validator stake thing as sort of an ultimate passive play, sort of thing. And so then started looking at, well, okay, well, what if every day I sell everything in my yield to AVAX to get, like you said, that sharp piling of AVAX tokens, which once you sell the NFTs is gone. The faucet is dry. And that's a really tricky line to walk, because you are pushing your luck. And in my experience so far in crypto, like there's a lot of PTSD around hanging out my liquidity, getting yield on it, and waiting for the rug to pull underneath of it. But there's a lot of things that are different about Chikn, though that sounds terrible.
This everybody always says, but this time it's different.
I swear. But suffice it to say, like, I acknowledge where we're at, and I'm acknowledging what's driving those NFT values. And so, just real quick, let's look at some price here, some price action of what's driving that. So the one thing that's really important to look at is, like you said, right now this season, I do believe that this Chikn platform is going to go the distance. I think they're going to go very well into the future and possibly make it out of this bear and into the next bull cycle, even if we're looking at a year to 2 years before that happens. I think there's a lot of reason to believe that, just based on the money that they've captured from royalties on all of those sales. They have an estimated $2 million net worth from that. But that's not to say it's not going to go ebb and flow. Like you said, what goes up must come down. And so the thing that's driving everything right now is this feed FOMO. And this is a website that was created by the community to try to estimate when we're going to run out of that supply. And the reason it has to be an estimate is because, like I described, the amount of feed that's produced is purely dependent upon how much fertilizer are people putting on their farmlands, how many roosters are staked or traded or leveled up and upgraded, or chickens upgraded to additional levels. So it's an estimate, but it can be fairly maintained to a window with a margin of error. And so currently November 16th is that window. And there is currently 38% of the feed supply remaining to be claimed before we get there. And so what we've already seen in the ecosystem is there were two moments where people thought we were closer to the end than we actually were. And so if we look at the chart of the feed token, let's take a look and zoom out and see if we can spot those moments. There is a pretty clear peak, and we dip back and then peaked again. And those were timed up perfectly with when people thought we were closer to the end than we actually were. Obviously, if we need to look at the whole chart just to see where we've been. And this is what's commonly known and referred to as a farm token. No pun intended for this being a farm equivalence, but you farm it, and then in the beginning, you farm it and people just dump it. It's just constantly, it's a faucet, free money, take it, dump it, take it, dump it. And so price keeps going down and down and down. And we even see that reflected down here in the volume. We had crazy volume in the beginning, and then the volume just dries up. This big spike here that we get around here was the rooster mint. There was a feed thing, rush on feed there. But then volume got really dry here. Just all through the summer, it just was churning along. And if we zoom in, it was just constantly dropping in value, as you'd expect from, like I said, a farm token. And then all of a sudden, recently, as the ecosystem has been heating up, it's just skyrocketed on volume. And so these are some things that I'm watching as far as figuring out what that exit plan looks like. I believe, we'll see, because the developers of this are also sort of game masters, where they understand what's at stake. They have a much bigger vision they want to get to. They do not want feed to run out and then people had to have no idea where to go next. Currently, we don't know where to go next because they want the feed to stay the focus until we get closer to the end before they reveal what comes next. But ignoring all of that, because that's all speculation on top of speculation, there has been a proven track record of as long as this number still exists and is counting down, there is a rush in the market for this feed. And so my personal strategy is starting to shape around keeping an eye on those NFT prices. Even if it dips to 80 or 90 AVAX, that's a bummer. I missed the top, but we kind of go through this in equities trading or token trading, any trading, not catching the knife, but spotting the trend. And since these are NFTs, it's not exactly a chart that you can TA. So I am watching that to make sure that if there's some change in the winds and prices start dropping, that I can get at least some of that value locked, because that would be a bummer to collecting a lot more AVAX towards this validator to lose the AVAX number. But at the same time, as long as these prices are doing this and I'm generating this token, and we don't need to dig into it, but looking at the egg chart, as long as these prices are doing this, that makes that daily yield something that is kind of hard to ignore, because every day I can lock that and lock that and lock that. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a conclusion here, other than to say, while this is very abstract, it's really what I think we wanted to highlight and focus on is the emotional nature of it. I also kind of wanted to just kind of showcase the uniqueness of the investment opportunity in crypto, though it is still highly speculative, highly dangerous. But I don't know. This has been an experience that I feel like was at least worth talking about, just to I don't know, broaden somebody's horizon on what's out there. Not to get into it, but just to hear about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a struggle for me because, I really want to build that AVAX number to go stake. And I'm going to switch back here to my current thing, because one of the call outs that I'll have here, and I guess the closest definition of an exit point for me is when feed runs out. That's the closest thing, because I was in the feed game to try to corner supply, hoard it, so when it's gone, supply is gone, demand hopefully is still high. That's where your price is going to go. And that's really the only kind of end game that I've had. And so I want to call out here, currently my egg emissions, and if this is factoring in my need to feed my rooster, so I've taken that out, I'm basically generating 8 AVAX a month, which, okay, that's cool. I mean, it's not zero, but it's not huge, right? But it's decent. It's respectable. And I think most likely, probably the plan that I'm going to execute on this going forward is keep those NFT tokens, because when those are gone, those emissions are gone. And the way that the ecosystem is shaping up, I think there's still significant positive price pressure on egg. And if you look at two of the other big assets that I have here at the bottom, the 1 million feed and the 1,000 egg, those are strictly there to simply generate feed for that run out time. So when feed is gone, it's now time to consider exiting those. And if you look, if I pulled the trigger today, now hopefully feed will go on more of a price run, but even today, that's 41 AVAX at current feed prices, and supply hasn't run out yet. So if I were to liquidate that and egg at 17 AVAX plus an 8 a month, I'd have my cost basis back on the original, AVAX buy-in. So, well, that's not letting me grow as much as, the 10, 15x. At least then I'm covered and I'm playing with the house's money at that point.
Yeah.
And so as long as the ecosystem looks like it's strong and they keep putting things there, I'll probably keep my NFTs and try to just liquidate the emissions to keep building that AVAX stake. Because honestly, I also have other AVAX outside of here, and I am staking those in a delegate form, and they're returning about about 1 AVAX a month. Okay, so that's my actually staking AVAX is only generating me about a month of 1 AVAX a month. Now it's very steady, very reliable. So if I got down to the house's money here and I can pull in 8 AVAX a month strictly from my emissions, why would I not do that? It's all the house's money. The house paid for the NFTs. Sure, maybe if the thing tanks and I have to get out of the NFTs, I don't sell them for the 100 AVAX that they're at today. Maybe I sell them for 20 AVAX. It's house's money. So bad. It's sad that I didn't get out at the top, but at least I got to grab some of those emissions along the way. And this is the trade-off and the struggle that I have.
Yeah. And it's good. I like the part of this chart that shows, because your situation is a lot cleaner than mine. Because I definitely got much deeper into compounding in the game, where you kept it very clean of like, take my egg, LP my egg, get more feed, keep my feed, the end. I mean, you did some compounding of feed, but you kept it clean. So, I mean, at least that checks out with your equities option strategy as well, of keeping things clean. But I like what you just said. Like right now you have a lot of 2 tokens, feed and egg, and at current value, you can get your cost basis back, and that is critical. And so if we try to move towards a wrapping this up sort of thing, and I try to take a wild jump to bridge this to something a little more familiar to anybody watching this, at the end of the day, what we're dealing with here is a yielding asset and compounding investment. And that exists in equities. You get dividends. You could play a dividend strategy with a large bag of money that, try to get passive income off of your dividends, and then try to figure out a strategy of like, but do I take how much of the dividends do I take out versus reinvest and compound and roll forward? And I hope that even though a lot of what we laid out is very abstract, that to me there's a lot of similarity in that perspective of compounding, when to know when to compound and when to exit, and that kind of, I think, goes more into the investment side of things, which we don't obviously normally talk about on Blockhead Traders. We don't talk about Blockhead Investments, which that sounds like a pretty sweet investment firm name. But I think that's part of how I summarize it and would try to link it out to something a little more relatable to the audience.
Yeah, definitely. It's very much similar to what you kind of called out, and that's kind of the way that I try to think about it too, to some degree. Is can I take the emissions from this dividend payment, and what do I do with it? Do I put it in my pocket? Do I reinvest it in itself? Do I reinvest it in another area that is a different type of investment? And for me, this was all speculative money going in, and being able to scale out of that speculation and start turning it into a less speculative, more boring play, which is AVAX staking. Of that's where it makes sense to me at this moment. Maybe we'll look at this video in another 11 months and it'll be worth nothing, and we'll have missed the boat, and everybody will be like, you morons.
Yeah. I mean, and the last thing I'll say, going a little bit back into it, is the one thing I'm still considering is, because you keep mentioning delegated staking and just staking in general, the massive risk that we have here on Chikn is there's a lot of value now that is 100% dependent upon the public's perception and gathering around one game, one platform, that sort of thing. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of AVAX value that it wouldn't be the worst idea to sell some of that now, and capture that, and then move it into, like you kept saying, the staking and the delegated staking, because that, by comparison, is a much safer route, because you're not dependent upon some team like Chikn as to whether or not they're going to stay relevant or go around, because we go back to the bullish thesis on the blockchain technology that when you're staking those AVAX tokens, you're only at risk of what the price of those tokens are, which right now is pretty low. Uh, so that's one thing that keeps going through my head of locking value into a safer route, safer in terms of crypto and comparison to this. But it's a struggle.
Yeah, the parallel that I would draw here is it's like equities. This game is like an equity, and when the market was crashing, tech was going down, losing value, people were cashing out of their equities to go and hold cash, a more stable, more secure store of value. And then once the market kind of recovers, then they redeploy that stored value into those equities and that speculation. So same thing. If this is an overheated, the trick is this overheated? That's the trick. Is do I take this value and lock it into a different store of value that's less risky and do something else with it or less risky? Well, this maybe see if it cools off. And that's the struggle. Is this in that overheated spot, or are we just starting to take off and we're not overheated yet?
Let's find out.
Stay tuned. So that brings us to the end of this week's episode. Really just an internal struggle for myself and a little bit of a struggle for Viper about, wow, here's this thing that we chunked down some money on just to see what would happen. It's going well for us, and now we're faced with, when do we step out? How do we step out? Where's that turning point? And this can be repeated for a crypto game. This can be repeated for stock equities that you get in, option plays, futures plays. Doesn't matter where it is. This is the struggle of knowing, wow, getting emotional, things are going well, you're feeling good about it. What do you do? And the answer is there really never really is a clear answer. And that's just something you'll have to kind of come to terms with. It's one of the reasons that I personally like to trade, because trades are very short term. You can put rules around them, less likely to get emotionally attached to them. This is one of those things where it's kind of a moonshot, kind of speculation, didn't really have any expectations for it. I mean, I think the only expectation I had was we were going to go to zero. So it was back to that. Yep, this is pure speculation. We're going to plunk something in here. I'm cool if it disappears. I mean, I'm not really cool, but I was okay with that to make the entry. And now we're faced with, well, we didn't go to zero. So what now? Like I said, most of trading is all mental and it's very psychological. And this is just one of those struggles. So I hope you guys learned something from this, maybe some insight, some parallels into how you trade. Otherwise, maybe you were entertained. Aside from that, the market is a great place to be in. It's a lot of fun, a lot of excitement going on these days, tons of volatility, up, down, up, down. I don't know. If you're not into that thing, maybe stay away, because it just goes one direction one day and then the other direction the next day. So have fun and good luck out there. And remember, think outside the block.